title, and my wife's baby wasn't mine, so I disappeared for years. Then she found me. There's a moment you don't come back from. For some men, it's the moment they walk in on their wife with someone else. For me, it was quieter, colder. It was the moment I held a baby in my arms and felt nothing familiar. No resemblance, no gut pull, just weight, just questions. My wife, Kala, was the kind of woman who drew attention without asking for it. Sharp laugh, smarter than anyone in the room, always 5 steps ahead. At least, that's how I saw her for years. Now I think she was just 5 steps away. Always. From me. From honesty. From something real. When she told me she was pregnant, I cried. Like an idiot. I didn't know how to feel anything but love for her then. Even though things were off. Even though the timing was strange. Even though she'd just come back from a work retreat, where her phone had mysteriously died for 36 hours. I didn't ask questions. I bought a crib. The baby was born on a Tuesday in late October. Rainy. Hospitals always smell like old plastic and newer regrets. They placed him in my arms and I smiled like I was supposed to. But inside, something cracked. He didn't have my eyes. Didn't have my nose. Didn't even feel like mine. Kala noticed my hesitation and said, "Don't worry, babies change." I said, "So do marriages." She didn't laugh. Neither did I. 3 weeks later, I took a paternity test. I told myself it was for peace of mind. But the truth is, I already knew. The results just gave me permission to act on a betrayal that had been marinating in silence for months. He wasn't mine. Not even a little. 0%. It was like reading a medical report about a stranger's blood and realizing you'd been cleaning their mess for weeks thinking it was your own. I didn't confront her right away. I did something worse. I watched. I studied her. How easily she smiled. How often she left the room when her phone rang. The way she never asked me if I was okay. How quick she was to say, "We're tired," instead of "You're tired." The night I disappeared, it wasn't dramatic. I packed 2 bags. Left the keys on the counter. Took cash, not cards. I didn't leave a note. Because I'd already written enough messages that went unread while she was busy texting whoever made her baby. I didn't answer her calls. Didn't speak to my friends. Didn't leave a digital trace. Some men get angry. I got quiet. And that quiet turned into distance. Distance became freedom. For 3 years, I didn't use my real name. Went by Jonas in a small town on the edge of nowhere. Worked at a hardware shop. Woke up early. Fed the neighbor's dog when she forgot. I stopped thinking about Kala, or the child, or who the father really was, because none of it mattered. I'd been replaced in silence, and so I erased myself just as silently. Until one day, she showed up. Not at my door. At my work. She stood by the counter like a ghost I never asked to see again. Hair longer. Eyes sharper. No ring. No apology. Just one sentence. "Ellis, he wants to meet you." Kala stood there, in a coat she probably thought made her look soft. Neutral tones. Natural makeup. That well-practiced face she used to wear when she wanted something. She hadn't aged a day. Which is to say, she still looked like a warning I used to ignore. "Ellis, he wants to meet you." No, hello. No, how are you? No, I know what I did. Just that sentence. I stared at her. Then I looked down at the receipt I was printing for a man buying drywall anchors. He tapped his card. I handed him his change. And only then did I say, "I think you're in the wrong town." Her jaw twitched. Still, she stepped closer. "I know you hate me." "Not anymore," I said. Which was true. You have to love someone to hate them. I hadn't done either in years. She followed me outside. I didn't invite her. Didn't stop her. Let her walk 3 steps behind me like the memory I thought I'd buried. We stood by the back of the shop, near the old propane tanks. Cold wind. Smell of rust and dried pine needles. She crossed her arms. "You left." "You lied," I replied. Her eyes darted. Still defensive. "Always. That baby wasn't yours biologically. But you were there. You were his first." "No." I held up a hand. "Don't cheapen it by calling it almost parenting. You knew. And you let me hold him anyway." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Because that's the thing about liars. They lose their voice around people who remember details. Kala reached into her purse. Pulled out a photo. A boy. Maybe 3 or 4 now. Messy hair. Big smile. "His name is Emmerich," she said. I nodded. Didn't touch the photo. Didn't flinch. She held it out. "He keeps asking who his father is." I told him. "I told him about you." I raised an eyebrow. "Which version?" Her shoulders dropped a little. The real one. I don't think you know what that is. She looked at me then. Really looked. Like maybe, for the first time, she realized I wasn't the man she thought she could manipulate with guilt and nostalgia. That man was dead. He died somewhere between the hospital hallway and the test results that undid everything. I asked her a question. The one that had circled my head on repeat during every empty December. Why didn't you tell me the truth? She didn't blink. Didn't lie. She just said, because you were safe. And he wasn't. Honest. Almost devastating. I looked out across the lot, past the road I drove every morning, past the woods that never asked me to perform or prove anything. And I said, you turned me into a placeholder. And now you want me to be a storybook ending. I just want him to know where he came from. I met her eyes. Then take him to the man who made him. She stood there, stunned. No script for this version of me. No comeback for a man who used to fold and now only stands. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Like maybe, finally, she was listening. Before she walked away, she asked, do you ever think about him? I didn't hesitate. I think about who I was when I held him. And I miss that man. But he's gone. And you're the reason. She left without another word. And when the shop door swung shut behind her, the air felt lighter. Not because she was gone. Because I didn't need her to be there in the first place. For 2 days after Kala left the shop, I didn't speak to anyone unless I had to. No long talks with Desmond. No extra shifts. I even skipped my usual stop at the corner diner, where they knew my name and my coffee order but never asked where I was from. Because I needed space, not from Kala, but from the version of myself who still wanted to believe she meant it. That I was enough. That she regretted it. That this wasn't just some strategic act of unfinished business wearing the face of a mother. The truth was worse. Kala didn't come to me for redemption. She came to transfer responsibility. Not for her mistakes, but for her son's questions. And here's the thing. I didn't resent the boy. I never had. I resented that I was once allowed to believe he was mine. The next morning, I found myself holding the photo she'd left behind. I'd thrown it in my glove box without thinking. Now, I studied it like a forensics file. The kid, Emmerich, looked happy, unbothered. He wasn't the one who lied. He didn't ruin anything. He was born into a story with too many footnotes and not enough truth. And me? I was a chapter no one asked to read aloud. That night, I sat on my porch and thought about names. How easily we give them. How hard it is to remove them. Dad. Father. Biological. Step. Absent. People throw those words around like they mean the same thing. But they don't. Not to the person holding the weight of them. When I finally called Desmond, he didn't say, I told you so. He just said, you don't owe her forgiveness, Elle. But you do owe yourself a future that doesn't look like punishment. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know if I agreed. I wasn't punishing myself. I was learning how to breathe again. It just sounded like silence to everyone else. Later that week, I got a letter. Not from Kala. From someone else. A lawyer. Envelope was thick. Handwritten address. No return label. Inside, an affidavit, some legal documents, a photo of Emmerich holding a balloon at a birthday party. At the bottom, a note in Kala's handwriting. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to know who you were. If you want to talk to him one day, here's how. No pressure. No demand. Just a crack in the wall. And for the first time since all this began, I didn't feel angry. I felt sad. Not for me. For him. Because the boy in that photo would one day ask why the man who held him in the hospital didn't stay. And no matter what story he was told, I wouldn't be there to rewrite it. But maybe that's the point. Maybe he doesn't need me to return. Maybe he needs me to be someone who's whole, so that if he ever does come knocking, he finds a man, not a ghost. That weekend, I drove to the old city. Didn't go to the house. Didn't drive by our favorite bakery. Didn't walk past the bench where I used to read while she shopped for nothing. I went to the park. The same one where I'd sat with Emmerich once, months before I knew the truth. He'd fallen asleep on my chest. I remembered thinking, this is what stillness feels like. But now, that memory had changed. It wasn't peace. It was quiet before a crash. I didn't stay long. Just long enough to understand. I didn't walk away from a child. I walked away from a story written without my consent. And the only way to stop bleeding was to close the book. There's a weird quiet that hits after a long storm. Not relief. Not celebration. Just a kind of dizziness. Like you've been spinning for so long that the stillness feels suspicious. That was me. The week after I got Kala's letter, I didn't know if I wanted to cry or clean the garage. So I did both. In silence. Because sometimes healing looks like organizing a toolbox you haven't opened in 3 years. It had been 4 years since I'd been Ellis Grayer in public. 4 years since I introduced myself without hesitation. And now? That name felt like it belonged to someone I was finally ready to meet again. So I updated my license, signed my full name at the DMV. And when the clerk handed it back, I stood in the parking lot staring at the little plastic card like it was a passport to a country I forgot I came from. I wasn't Jonas anymore. I was me. Not her husband. Not her ghost. Just Ellis. The next week, I did something bigger. I drove 4 hours to a mountain trail I'd bookmarked years ago. Something about it, the height, the narrow switchbacks, the promise of solitude, always scared me. But now, I wanted the quiet. Not the kind that waits for confrontation. The kind that doesn't need anything from you at all. I packed light. One change of clothes. A notebook. An old camera. I didn't bring the photo of Emmerich. I didn't bring the test results. Because this trip wasn't about remembering. It was about removal. The trail was hard. Harder than I remembered reading. Steep in the beginning. Jagged near the midpoint. At one point, I slipped and caught myself on a root so sharp it left a slice across my palm. I stared at the blood for a while, then laughed. Because finally, something hurt that made sense. At the summit, I sat with my legs hanging over the ledge. No music. No distractions. Just a wind that didn't know my name, and didn't care what I'd done to deserve peace. And I thought about him. Emmerich. The boy. The smile. The balloon. I didn't picture him calling me dad. Didn't fantasize about a reunion, or a hug, or some cinematic moment where he forgave me without ever knowing what he was forgiving. I just hoped. He never felt like a mistake. Because he wasn't. The betrayal was hers. The silence was mine. But the boy? He was never the villain in this. And I hoped someone was raising him with truth. Even if it wasn't me. When I climbed back down the mountain, I wrote this in my notebook. I am not who she said I was. I am not who I thought I had to be. I am not a victim of her choices. I am the result of my own. And I choose to be free. That night, back in town, I went to the diner again. First time in weeks. Lana, the waitress, grinned when she saw me. I was about to send the police, she joked. I smiled back. I got lost. Did you find anything? I nodded. Myself. Somewhere in the trees. She didn't ask for more. She just poured my coffee and left the cream, even though I never used it. Because some people know when to let you come back quietly. Later that week, I got another letter. Smaller envelope. This one wasn't from a lawyer. Just callous handwriting on the front. Inside, a single card. No paragraphs. Just. He asked about you again. I told him the truth. If you ever want to write him, I'll give it to him, when he's ready. No manipulation. No guilt. Just a bridge. Unbuilt. But open. I didn't write back. Not because I never would. But because for the first time in years, I wanted to be ready. Not to explain. Not to defend. But to tell the truth without shaking. A month passed. Then 2. No more letters. No surprise visits. No texts. It wasn't silence. It was stillness. And for the first time in 4 years, I let myself fully live in it. I wasn't flinching at every unknown number. I wasn't rehearsing what I'd say if Emmerich showed up one day with his mother's eyes and a question that cracked the sky. I was just here, breathing, existing, and more importantly, belonging to no one but myself. I started volunteering at the community center, a woodworking class, a few teenagers, some older guys, a kid who never took his earbuds out but carved the most beautiful messes I'd ever seen. I didn't talk about the past, didn't bring up Kala or paternity tests or the boy I once held and never called my own. I just showed them how to build something with their hands. And maybe, in a way, I was building something too. Because every plank, every splinter, every crooked nail, it all stayed. Nothing walked away from me. One Saturday, I checked my mailbox and saw an envelope with no return address. Not Kala's handwriting this time. New, neat, blocky. Inside was a card. A drawing of a rocket ship and a lopsided star. And one sentence in big, messy letters. Thank you for being there, even when you weren't. No name. Just that. I didn't cry. I just sat down at the kitchen table, closed my eyes, and let it in. I never found out if Emmerich wrote it himself. Maybe Kala helped. Maybe it was her handwriting disguised as his. Maybe it didn't matter. Because that sentence? That wasn't about blood. That was about presence. And somehow, even in my absence, something of me had stayed behind. I didn't respond. Not yet. But I bought a notebook the next day. Hardcover. Black. And on the first page, I wrote, "To Emmerich, if we ever meet, this is what I want you to know." And then I kept writing. Not for him. For me. Because you don't need to be someone's biological father to pass on a truth. That it's okay to walk away from a lie. That sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is disappear before you become a bitter version of yourself. That healing isn't loud, or viral, or symmetrical. It's just yours. I still don't know if I'll see him. But if I do, I know what I'll say. I wasn't ready when you were born. Not because of you. Because I was grieving a life I thought I had. But I'm not grieving anymore. I'm living. And I hope you are too. Sometimes, I walk by the lake trail just outside town. There's a tree stump at the edge of the water. I sit there now and then, watching the ripples spread out from skipping stones. And I think, I didn't get the family I thought I'd have. But I got me back. And maybe, that's enough. The end. Ellis didn't rewrite the past. He didn't fix what Calla broke. He didn't get his title back. But what he got was better. He got free. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to help this video reach more viewers. See you in the next one.